Hello, hello. Lovely, lovely to see people jumping in.
Hi, April, Judy. The general session just finishing up, and people are kind of moving into different other sessions.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Sounds good. Thank you.
I always feel like there should be background music for these things as people enter.
Yeah.
Jessica, should you and I sing?
Oh no.
You
Oh
said that
no.
pretty adamantly. No.
I don't think anyone wants to hear me sing. Mm. Yeah, Clarence, I don't know how long we should be waiting. I guess we can give it until like a good amount of people show up.
Yeah, I'll look at 50
Okay.
at the hour, or 50 to the hour, and we'll see.
Sounds good.
Although I've always loved quiet, like smaller group chats. So I'm down for either. It's all good.
That is true. Yeah.
Speaking of BTS, maybe we should have had that running in the background.
Clarence, it's not too late. Get the BTS song. Oh my gosh, it's funny. I feel even at it's 8:50 for me being here in Los Angeles, but like I'm stretching already, just having sat through so much of the week. Judy, do you feel that too, like needing to stretch?
Yes, I start most sessions with a stretch.
Oh, I love that.
I think we should do it. Let's do it, everyone.
Yes, I actually like that idea. Since we're waiting for people, we might as well stretch.
Okay.
I love that. Ooh, good.
Left. And deep breaths. We often take shallow breaths. And roll your shoulders.
Ooh.
Exactly. 2 more. And then look side to side, to the right and then to the left.
Ooh.
Zoom fatigue is real.
Oh my gosh, Judy, I love you. Thank you so much for leading us through that.
Keep going.
That actually feels really good. Just the simple movement of looking right to left.
And then rinse and repeat.
Mm. Lovely, thank you.
Do you guys think we should get started? I don't know if we should give it some more time.
Let's see, what time are we at?
We're about 6 minutes past the starting time.
How many people do we have?
24.
You know, my gut says like we can roll with it, and if people join, they join. But what do
Yeah.
y'all think?
Sounds
And
good.
this is
I
being
just don't want to
recorded,
cut.
right?
Yes, it is. Yeah, I just don't want to cut too much into your presentation time. Yeah, I guess we can go ahead and get started. To everyone that's joined, thank you for waiting and appreciate you all joining today. And I guess Clarence will just continue to admit people as we go. So, all right. Hello and welcome to session 113. This is Leading for Impact in a Hybrid World with Sohee Jun at the 2022 States Pro Women's Leadership Conference. So if you're in the wrong session, please refer to the agenda on the conference event site or the app. And my name is Jessica Shen, and I'm your session leader today. So quick introductions. For myself, I'm an electrical integration engineer at General Motors, and I've also been a national volunteer for SACE Human Resources since 2017. And we also have Clarence Lowe here with us today, and he'll be helping me facilitate this session. And now it's my honor to introduce Sohee, our presenter. So as an executive coach and leadership development expert, Sohee works with emerging leaders and executives to unleash their untapped power for themselves and their teams. During her 20 years in the corporate world, she's helped leaders transform themselves from frustrated executives to insightful, impactful, and inspired leaders who are engaging employees in exciting new ways and driving their organizations to great success. So Sohee works with world-renowned Fortune 500 companies in entertainment and media, gaming, startups, financial services, and engineering, helping these high-performing leaders, emerging leaders, and executive teams identify and strategically capitalize on moments of shift and challenge as opportunities for powerful growth and change. So now we have some logistics to go over. To make sure that there are no distractions during the presentation, just please remain muted during the session unless Sohee asks for people to speak up. And if you have any questions, please submit them in the Zoom chat and we'll get to them at the end. And if you're having any technical difficulties, please reach out to me or Clarence in the chat and we can do whatever we can to assist you. You can also go to the event app or website and click on the help desk in the menu. And so with that, I will turn it over to Sohee to start sharing.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Okay, give me a second. I will share my screen. There we go. Ooh, look at that, sort of a seamless switchover. I'm so excited to be here with all of you. Thank you for coming to my session. And Judy, again, thank you for leading us in a stretch while we were waiting. That really helped me feel really flexible and ready for today. So, you know, I'm really excited about this topic and so glad to see all of you here because as I've been working with so many of my clients, you know, this is such a hot topic and it's very timely. So we'll see if we can get through all of this in just the next hour. But, you know, as a leadership coach and a leadership development expert, this is just core to what I've been talking about with my clients. So let's go over to the next slide. So Jessica shared, you know, my bio. So thank you for reading that. I feel like it was a mouthful, Jessica. You did a great job, but it's true. I am a leadership coach to what I say is highly ambitious women. Because one, I am one, and I coach and work with clients from a space of having lived the experience. So I work primarily with ambitious women and emerging leaders because I was an emerging leader as well in the corporate world. So I have been in total doing this work for over 20 years and working with amazing clients in the entertainment and media space, mostly in the past 10 years. But also I had my start at Jet Propulsion Lab, which is a NASA center, working with rocket scientists, I get to say that, and worked in financial services as well. So the variety of industries has really served me well in terms of being an entrepreneur and really understanding all the different challenges of what it takes to lead, especially now. So this is why this topic is so near and dear to my heart. In addition, it's kind of grainy. You can see on the slide that I also wrote a book called Mommy Tracked: How to Take Authentic Risks and Find Success on Your Terms. And this book was published in 2020, and it was as a result of my lived experience as a mom to, you can see on the slide, I have 3 kids. They're lovely most of the time. I have a teenager, a boy. Well, oh my gosh, I said teenager, but he's only 12. He acts like a teenager. So I have a 12-year-old boy, I have a 10-year-old girl, and a 7-year-old boy. So they definitely keep me busy. They keep me challenged. And I always say that they're my greatest teachers. And hopefully I'm teaching them too as well, but my greatest work. But they inspired this book for me because I was working with so many women who were really wondering, like, what does success look like for them? And it's also through my lived experience as well, in which I tried many different tracks. I've tried the corporate track. I've tried, going up the ladder. I've tried going sideways. I've tried off tracking. And all of these experiences in which I was looking really to define my own, or come up with my own definition of success. So this book is really a culmination of my lived experience and working with really highly ambitious women who want to find what that is for themselves and take all of these steps to achieve it. So that's Mommy Tracked. I shared that I'm a mom. Also, just as a side note, I'm about to become a mom again to a puppy. So I bring Frosty home on Sunday. I'm a little nervous, I have to admit, but hopefully it'll go well. And as I shared, I've also led teams internally. So starting from the age of my late 20s, early 30s, in which I was a leader in the financial services world. I was a leader to a small team. And I gotta say, I did it all wrong. I just messed up that role royally, but that's where I say I learned the most in terms of how to lead and how to do that effectively. And catapult into my career about 10 years later, I was able to lead a team again at Warner Brothers, in which, I would say I did it much more purposefully and intentionally and differently so that I could be a more effective leader for my team. So that's a little bit more about me. The other thing too, and I think Jessica shared this up front in terms of, how to engage, I am a presenter that believes in having conversation. So if something resonates with you as I'm talking through this or sharing, context, please put that in chat. We're going to monitor that, and we want to know, and I in particular want to know what you resonate with and what you get curious about, so we can continue the conversation and answer questions that you might have. The other thing too is I'm going to ask you as we go through this to stay curious to what's being shared with you. I believe firmly in growth mindset, and part of that is staying curious and open to the context. In addition to that, suspending judgment. And why that's important is that we all walk around with so many biases, whether we know of them or not. And so to the extent that we can suspend judgment, stay open and stay curious, that is how I'm going to ask you to show up in this next hour with me. And of course, questions, like if you have them, put them in chat and I'm happy to answer. All right, well, here's the thing. Let me set this up and talk about, over the past 2.5 years. I know that many of you have probably engaged in discussions already around this. Perhaps it's been talked about as you enter into this session already, but I cannot emphasize enough just this VUCA world that we've been in. And for those of you that are not familiar with what VUCA means, you see that on the slide, which is, it's an acronym for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. I mean, this just summarizes so well the past 2.5 years, and even before that, but never before have we all collectively felt it together and gone through something as a collective in which we've experienced so much radical change, right? I mean, just 2020 in review, we have, and we are still going through a global pandemic. And many of us are now probably in the, transition of going back to work in person, either part-time or full-time, like in person, or you're transitioning, or you're doing some hybrid in which you do some of it virtually or still in a virtual work mode. We have had historic social movements in the past 2.5 years. Black Lives Matter, Stop Asian Hate. We've had so much in this condensed amount of time. Oh, and let's not forget, there's also a historic election and all of the different outcomes with that. And in the midst of all that, there have been incredible shifts in technologies, right? We've heard of things like artificial intelligence and quantum computing. And oh, by the way, the first mRNA vaccine developed in less than a year. It's incredible. When I was putting this slide together, I actually sat here and went, oh my gosh, the amount of change that we have gone through in such a compressed amount of time it can be overwhelming. And if at times you feel overwhelmed, there's absolute proof here of why you would feel that way. And, for many of us, as I speak with leaders and coach them, what I hear often as the tie through is that there's a lot of fatigue, right? It's been compressed. These things that have happened in the past 2.5 years in which, in the past, they would have gone on like in a 5-year span, or we would have some sort of quote unquote rest or like not so much change in between. They've all been compressed in the span of 2.5 years. And so fatigue and overwhelm is common. And as leaders of people and teams, we really have to not only care for ourselves, but really understand that that's the world that we live in. Okay. So the other thing too, so that's just setting the context, but and there is a person by the name of Ray Kurzweil, and I don't know if you've heard of him, but he is a world-renowned futurist, or in other words, as I like to put it, they're just looking at the future and making trends. But he is a futurist in which he said that the rate of change is like exponentially getting faster and faster. So in 20 years from now, he said the rate of change will be 4 times what it is today. Let me just stop there. I mean, take that in. 4 times what it is today. Are you kidding me? Just as I sit here this morning, I'm like, I don't know if I can speed it up anymore. Or how do I keep up with that? Right? So he said, we're going to see 20,000 years of change in this century. Whew, that's astronomical. And, what's interesting too, technology, I think you all are aware, technology has made much of this possible, in which things have been exponentially getting faster and faster. And what's interesting is that we see behavioral changes as well. And this has so many implications for how we lead, or the things that we should pay attention to as leaders, is that how we communicate has also gotten faster. So do any of you notice, and you can put this in chat or put like a thumbs up like symbol, that even how we talk has gotten faster, that our language is shortening and it's speeding up? So for example, if any of you have kids, or just even texting with your friends, the trend of just using more emojis, right? Just shortening it and just putting all the emojis out there. And then the number of acronyms, oh my gosh, I can't even keep up. It's LOL, ROFL, IRL, IMHO, LMA, LFA, all the acronyms that are used instead of actually typing it. The other thing that we see as evidence of communication getting faster is things like Audible. If any of you use that book tool, Audible, they have the option now to speed things up by 1.5. And also with, I believe, movies, I think on Netflix, you can now watch things 1.5 times faster. So technology is also allowing us to view things faster, experience things faster, and now Google Calendar offers 15-minute increments for scheduling meetings. So this is just to share that a lot of things are shifting in addition to just what we've experienced collectively as a world and globally with the pandemic, and it can be super overwhelming. So this leading for impact also has to shift. So what does that mean? All right. So we're going to unpack that. And hopefully this slide didn't overwhelm you all too much. It was not meant to, but just as a way to set context. So yes, so absolutely leadership is shifting and there is a increased demand on leaders as a result. It's not only in the actual skills of leading, but also the mindset of a leader as well, right? So how many of you have heard of the Great Resignation? Yeah? Okay, yeah. So it's been known as the Great Resignation or otherwise as the Great Evaluation for employees, in which, you know, they're really taking this time and this collective experience that we've gone through to take stock of their lives. And more importantly, around the things that matter, like what matters to them. They're really getting down to the values. And also what that means is that they're demanding more from our workplaces. They are not only wanting to, you know, leave their current situations or find jobs and roles that really align to their values, but they're also picking teams and leaders that also align to their values as well. So that is a different way of looking at work from what it used to be, in which it was just a place that you went to help pay the bills or support the family or whatever. It's taking on a way different, bigger meaning for people. And leadership has the direct line of impact for that. There's a lot more mission driven, you know, looking for the companies that are mission driven and values driven. And this is really about the great reevaluation and resignation is really about wanting to know that what they're doing is worth their time away and worth their energy, right? I mean, again, going back to the past 2.5 years in which people have, you know, we've experienced people passing or, you know, getting sick and all of these things that kind of put this to the forefront in terms of what matters. And so again, companies are looking at having to shift things. And along with that is leadership, the big shift in leadership. So as I share that, I'm wondering what's coming up in chat. Is there anything for question-wise, Clarence, that is coming up or?
Just general comments as you were going through, but certainly for the audience, do put any questions or comments back in the chat and I'll be monitoring.
Okay, but I do see, yeah, people are resonating that it's things have sped up for sure. And people are talking faster. I think people resonated with that. And yeah, life has, I love what Jessica said, life has really taken priority over work these days. So absolutely. So with that, and knowing that leadership is shifting, I want to ask you all a question, and I'm going to put a poll question up. And the question is, what leadership skill or skills were most important before the pandemic? What do you think that was? So let's give it, you know, about 45 seconds, give people time to think and respond to the poll question. Before all of the changes and the massive global, you know, VUCA that we've been through, What leadership skill were most important? Skill or skills? All right, let's see. We have 63% of you that have responded. I would love to see more. Okay. I want us to get up to at least 75% participated. That's when you know the results are really robust, speaking from an analytical lens here. All right. Well, it looks like there's certainly one or two that are leading in terms of responses. All right, I think that I think this is a good amount. So let's end the poll now. We have 86% that have responded. And Clarence, is that you? Okay, great, thank you. All right, here's the results, drum roll. Okay, so we have some clear leaders here in terms of the responses. So strategic thinking at 53% as the most important skill before pandemic. And then followed closely by that is presence. So I'd love to ask all of you, is this surprising at all in terms of the results and what led? You can put that in chat. If it's not surprising, tell me why you think those two were the most important skills before the pandemic. Get your typing fingers ready. Yeah, Clarence, I think I would have agreed with you in terms of thinking communication was one of the leading skills. And then for those of you that responded strategic thinking, is anyone willing to come off mute and tell us why? Why strategic thinking? As I shared, I'm all about conversation, less lecturing. Who would like to come off mute? Oh, let's see. Andy, you said not surprising. Take charge folks seem to be highly valued and seen as competent. Yep. Andy, did you vote strategic thinking as well, or strategic thinking and presence? I'm curious.
Hi, this is Andy. I did put both strategic thinking and presence.
Okay, so let me ask you, what does presence mean to you? I'm always curious about that.
I was thinking about, how people are perceived, when they are, leading something or in the room with others, and people can feel their commanding presence, not necessarily the physical presence or how they look, but how they're perceived by others. And, that could be, a good or a not so good thing. But I have noticed that that presence that commands others is typically seen as a very, I don't know if this is a word, a leaderly type of a thing.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And, I think I agree with you there, Andy, in terms of what presence means. It's the ability to influence, it's the energy, it's kind of like the charisma that a person has, which communication is really tied to that as well, right? And their ability to get people to come along with them. So it's less focused on what they look like externally, but more about their energy and how they galvanize folks. Yeah. Cool. Let's go back to chat. It says, Rosary, you say, I was a little torn how to answer the question. I don't blame you. It's not an easy one. There are things that I thought should have been a leading skill, but in practice, I didn't see as much from people who had risen up to leadership positions, right? So sometimes it doesn't match, right? Where you think leadership should encompass certain skills, but those that actually do rise and get promoted doesn't really match one-to-one. I get that. David, you said no surprise to me. Leaders pre-pandemic were the ones that stepped up and had a strategic direction, not even if they were right. Yeah, it was a little bit more predictable, right, for leaders to be able to set the strategy for years on out. And if you even think about how companies planned, they would think about it in 5-year terms. Let's do a 5-year plan, in which I think the pandemic has really turned that all upside down. And I know as I work with leaders, I advise them to really think about the 1-year look, just planning 1 year out versus that whole thing. Oh, sorry, I advanced too far. And then Sonia, you say, I think human relationships were less important before the pandemic than the business goals. Now, to some extent, people are the business goal. Yeah. Sonia, I love that you said that. Can you come off mute and tell us more?
So yeah, I mean, this is my own observation. I think the focus has shifted a little bit. You know, people, it's been an eye-opener on a lot of levels. So the pandemic. So I think people are able to realize a lot of things, including their impact on the environment. And I mean, that's just one of the small things. But just, you know, being there for each other and taking care of each other and just really listening, and that's at least for me. I mean, it's been quite an eye opener, and from what I see on social media and stuff like that, I think a lot of people share that. So before that, it would be business goals, monetary goals, and so on and so forth. Now people realize that without people, all that doesn't make sense. So
Yeah.
that's kind of, I think, to that extent, the human race has evolved and kind of realized what's truly important. And I think that's one of the key things the pandemic has taught us. So
Yeah, thank
that's
you.
been a shift.
I agree with you, Sonia. And I think that when we look at some of the positives of what the pandemic has brought forward, it is that it's what I call human skills, and the ability to engage with each other and want to connect. I think, that was not so much of a focus, to your point, before all of this happened. And so it's brought it to the forefront in the business sense, right? So I think you're absolutely right in that. Before, it's like, okay, what's the revenue? And not that businesses don't care about that, but it's less the leading focus. It's like more about how do we connect? How do we care for one another? And my hope is that this doesn't go away, because we do ultimately have to work with and through people. And to your point, I'm wondering too if that lends itself to like what that means for leaders. And if you lead teams, how do you make that happen in a way that feels very authentic and genuine and values driven and all of that? Because that's what people are seeking nowadays, especially after what we've been going through. So thank you for that. I appreciate that. So yes, absolutely. It's more about human relationships now. So this is, it's interesting because I say, as a leadership coach, I do kind of my own informal, very unscientific kind of needs assessment, or like taking in data. And what I know for sure, pre-pandemic, the leading thing that people came to me for in terms of like wanting coaching around was definitely presence. So how do they show up? How do they have charisma? And also like delegation was a big one. How do I delegate effectively? And then the third thing, and not necessarily like separate from, but like the other thing that led was around communication. How do I communicate effectively? How do I have, gravitas? How do I give feedback? How do I have hard and difficult conversations? So those were the things that came up mostly pre-pandemic. And now what I'm seeing it's been interesting. Through the pandemic, it's been literally leaders coming to me about how to self-care and get themselves through all of this crazy changing day-to-day stuff. Probably not surprising, given the context that I set up, but also how do they engage their folks through this virtual medium? How do they, do these touch points that isn't exhaustive and actually really valuable for people? How do they keep them connected? How do they communicate and touch base? And all of these kind of, what I would say, going back to the fundamentals of leading, but now doing it in a virtual medium. So those were the things that led, and it made for an interesting shift, because those are the things that, I mean, leaders had to become overnight like tech gurus in understanding what was available and how to keep in touch, and how to support their employees through that. So Clarence, thank you for sharing the results. I think we can put that down now, or I'll just do that. And then, so yeah, so I think, you know, those of you that participated in the poll, you were all right. So thank you for doing that. So my next question to y'all is this: what does it look like to successfully lead, or lead successfully in a virtual world? So, you know, we talked about pre-pandemic. Now let's shift to the virtual world that we were in, or that many of us are still in. And what does it look like to lead successfully in a virtual world? You can put that in chat. Let's see what your thoughts are.
Hi, can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I, at least in my own company, I've seen there being some shift in focusing more on results. It's less of a where are you doing your work and at exactly what time, but a greater focus on results. And at least certainly for our company and my team, it's a very global team. So I think there's a lot more thought now given to how can we do things asynchronously? What is the best way to use this time that we actually share, where all the time zones actually overlap? So I think like becoming like a time ninja is a lot more important now than it ever used to be. And I think it's challenging some people to think differently about how we communicate too, because I do think that there's still a good chunk of our population that's like, oh, we need to do this thing. Let's all fly to London and do it together in the same room. And it's like, well, I mean, does it fit in the schedule? Because, you know, there's there's other ways to do that. And I mean, I'm not saying we got it all right. Like there's been a lot of stuff that I think we still have to work on, but I do think there's been a greater recognition of the diversity of what people are dealing with, and also the diversity of options that we have now in how to interact and collaborate meaningfully.
Oh my goodness. Yes, yes, yes. And is this Rosary that was, did I say your name?
Yes, yeah, that's me. Hi.
Hi, Rosary. Thank you. Absolutely. I love everything that you shared. And yes, it is what this time has broken open wide is this focus on you don't need to be at your desk physically to produce results. And what's interesting, having been in the workforce for over 20 years, is that, you know, I personally used to fight for the ability to be able to do work at home, or, you know, part-time in a different area where I didn't have to have butt to the seat, right? What's that phrase? Head and, help me someone, butts in seats type of mentality, in which managers were really looking at to see, you know, are they showing up at work, physically sitting down, and are they present? And that's kind of blown that up in terms of, we have proven through the pandemic, we don't need to do that. In fact, we have over tilted in that in a virtual world. Absolutely, we can get so much more done, right? And then the over tilt to that is now like, okay, well then we need to actually manage our time a little bit more effectively and actually build in break times, stretch times, like the one that Judy just led us through before this. It's like, how do we build in buffer times that were actually good for us when we were together in real time? But yes, more focus on results and how we communicate. There's more options. And this offers a lot for leaders to think through, right? So if you have a team in which, you know, some people are virtual and some people are in person, this is so much for leaders to think through and, you know, to be very intentional about. So there's a lot of complexity here with all of the diversity and all of the ability to do things. So let's see, in chat it said, yep, it's even, Andy, but even more important to be aware of how each of your team members prefer to be communicated with, right? Do we all prefer IM, phone, email? What does that look like? Yes, Con, you said head count by counting the butts and seats. Yep, that's what I was trying to say. And then Christina, back-to-back 8-hour meeting blocks are really draining. Yes, yes. Absolutely. That is the other thing I'm seeing with leaders. It's very draining. Rita, you said I've conducted more one-on-ones with my team members, trying to understand their environment and their struggles, giving them time to adjust, and we move to remote. Yep, ensuring that they're able to meet milestones at the same time. Yeah, and this is, you know, what Sonia talked about in terms of just the human connection and trying to engage people and understand the larger context. Definitely, Sonia, the physical barriers are receding. So yes, leading successfully in a virtual world takes all of that. So thank you for participating in chat. And, you know, we're talking about now, like, how do we do that successfully? Here's the skill sets. Here's what you see on the screen, which is in order to lead, at least virtually, very successfully, you have to be very flexible. I think we just saw that, right, through the conversation in chat and what was shared, is this flexibility and agility, not only to all the change that's going on, but how you set your employees up for success. Now, will you allow them to be, you know, remote? And what does that look like? Will you allow them to be in person? Thinking through all of these things really requires an agility and adaptability in your mindset and how you lead, because there are so many options, right? And then you also have to be a tech guru. You have to be up on what are all of the different mediums that allow us to provide these options. Is it Teams? Is Zoom the best thing? Is Google Hangouts? Is it Slack? Is it, you know, Messenger? How do we stay connected as a team? So you definitely have to be at least, you know, familiar with some of the options, not necessarily an expert in every single one, but to know the offerings. So tech guru. Now, this third one is big. It's a big topic to unpack, and it's something that I coach people around the most on, which is emotional intelligence. And that is the ability to connect, to understand, you know, that people want to be led differently, but it starts from a place of understanding yourself. Emotional intelligence is built on this concept of self-awareness. What triggers you? Do you get overwhelmed by what and how do you care for yourself so that then you can care for your team? And then decision making is still a part of being a leader, so virtual leadership doesn't take that out. But in addition, it's resilience, right? Resilience and the ability to connect your team together. So these are some of the key traits of leading virtually successfully. Now, what I want to do is shift us to looking at this hybrid model of leadership in which many of us are leading teams that are virtual and also in person. So what does that look like? Well, here we go. Drum roll. The first and foremost thing that leads, and it's in big, bold italics, is emotional intelligence. Is this surprising to anyone? Emotional intelligence is the thing that is of utmost importance in hybrid model of leadership. You can put it in chat or just come off mute and tell me if you're surprised by emotional intelligence being the first.
I'm not surprised by that. I think I totally see it. When you're hybrid, you just have so much more to negotiate.
Yeah.
Not just, you know, like I think it's easy, it's tempting to just like sort of talk about logistics. So when are you coming into the office and when am I coming into the office and blah blah blah. But it just it adds a layer of complexity that I mean, we've never had it on this scale, right? Like we all just entered this 2 going on 3-year massive experiments on virtual hybrid. And what does that mean when you're in person versus not? And even just not even just your own schedule being hybrid, but if you're on a team that's hybrid, it can really highlight inequalities, right, that we're all aware of.
Mhm.
But when you're like sitting in your nice little home office and maybe your colleague is in a crowded office that they've had to commute an hour to, you know, what does that mean for your relationship and the work that you're trying to do together?
Yeah, absolutely. Rosary, you said it so nicely. Um, Look, like leadership in and of itself is not easy, right? Having been one, I understand that whether you're in a hybrid or whether you're all in person, it was never an easy role to take on. But even more now in this new shift, or not new shift, but just a shift now of having more hybrid teams and leading in this way, you're absolutely right, Rosary. It is super complicated. There is a lot to negotiate, to your point. And emotional intelligence, and why I coach around this the most, is that, again, it starts from a place of self-awareness. And I'm a firm believer that if you are not aware of what your strengths and your gaps are, it's really hard to provide for other folks on your team and to understand their context and their triggers and their complexity. And boy, don't we all have a lot going on behind the screen, right? It's not, I wish it was as simple as seeing like everyone just on this thing, but when you have people on the screen and in person and having difficult conversations and delegating and staying connected to your team, that becomes even more complicated. And if you don't have a firm understanding of what all of that looks like and means, and the ways in which you self-care for yourself as a leader, it makes it really hard to build on the other pillars of emotional intelligence, which is self-awareness, and then the ability to manage yourself is the second pillar of emotional intelligence, and then it's relationship building, and then it's relationship management. So notice that I said that in an intentional way. First, understand yourself, then manage yourself, understand others, and then manage others. So emotional intelligence is definitely leading, because that leads to be able to, the second point, which is relationship building, and then the ability to be agile, right? So resilience is another key piece to this that I've seen a lot of leaders burn out, and this concept of self-care has come to the forefront for many of us. What does that mean? How do they do that intentionally? How do they carve out the time in these days in which we are asked to be in meetings back to back more often than not? So it's no wonder that self-care has become a global industry, in which the Global Wellness Institute has estimated that it's in the billions, that self-care is such a big thing now. I'm not surprised. And then, of course, in the hybrid model of leadership, communication, I mean, that's always been there. As leaders, we need to know how to communicate effectively. But then also, it's this ability to coach. How do we coach our folks and support them in different ways? And then now more than ever, problem solving is such a needed skill, because we have global teams. We have teams that are, of people in teams of different generations. In this workforce now, we have the most generations than we've ever seen, from baby boomers down to Gen X, Gen Z, Gen Y. I don't know at what point it stops. I don't think Gen Z is in there yet, but we have the most generations we've ever seen, and a global world in which we are trying to navigate leadership. Woo, I'm tired just saying all that. So yes, Jessica, I think you're right. It's not surprising. With employees being remote, you need a lot of empathy to evaluate how your colleagues are performing. Absolutely. And Con, I think you were agreeing with Rosary. And then Clarence, oh, you said 4 to 5 generations. Yep, we do. It's a lot. So let me hone in more on communication, because that's something that leaders are always very curious about. How do they do that more effectively? Well, the first 2 bullets on here, I think, go hand in hand. What we need to be more mindful of than ever before is that it has to be intentional and very purposeful, right? So what that means is, even down to choosing the mode and method in which you communicate. Are you going to choose a Slack Or are you going to pick up the phone? Who is the person that you are trying to communicate with, and what works most effectively for that context? So we've had to take a step back, because no longer are we able to just regularly go by the office or by the cubicle of that person we want to talk to and just do a poop and swoop, or just drop in and say, hey, what's up? We have to think about these things. If Jessica's on my team and maybe she's virtual today, oh, right, she's virtual today, I need to meet with her. Maybe the best way to do that is, a phone call. So again, adding to the complexity, but making sure that as a leader, you're very intentional and purposeful about the time you do connect with them. That's key. The other thing is transparency. Ooh, this is big. I mean, Andy, did I make you laugh? I've never heard of that poop and swoop. Well, it's a concept. I mean, that's something else, but it's a concept in which leaders drop in, they drop the info, and they're out. Poop and swoop. So back to this concept of transparent communication. It's and workers more than ever are asking for leaders to step up and share with them context. If you think about all the ways in which people can get information now, right? We have news feeds, we have alerts, we have CNN, we have apps, we have streaming, in which news is delivered to us at a really fast rates. And now leaders are being asked to be more transparent about what's going on in the world, what's going on with our company, what's going on within our company. And that takes a lot of courage to be able to share at the right level the things that are going on. And that's appropriate, right? So transparency and courageous conversations, they go hand in hand. And last but not least, it also has to be very connective. Like, you still have to engage your folks. So what you share and the tone in which you share it is also very important as well. It needs to be very connective. So does this resonate with any of you all in terms of the communication needing to be all of these things in this hybrid world of leadership? I see you shaking your head, Jessica. You're like, yes. I'm glad it's making sense.
I guess if I could ask a question.
Of course.
So I totally see this is necessary. I try my best to do it as much as I can. Do you have advice for when perhaps your own leader is not perhaps displaying some of these things? How to broach that in a way that's, constructive, respectful,
Yeah,
especially in a remote context. So I've never actually met my line manager in person.
okay. And given that, I don't know the specific thing that you're wanting more of, I would lead with intent. What I mean by that is, if you're curious about wanting to learn more about something, lead with that in that communication with your boss to say, hey, I'm really curious about learning more about this. I'm wondering if you can provide me with. And I know those are broad terms, but leading with that intent helps the person understand what it is you're trying to get out of something, right? If you want them to share more updates about what's going on organizationally, say something like, I really enjoy when you share what's going on with the company, because it helps me understand how my job connects to the bigger picture. I'm wondering if you could share more of that in our one-on-ones or during our team meetings.
Yeah, that's helpful. Sometimes having that prompt of I'm curious about, or I like when, or this makes me feel connected. Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you.
Good. Yeah, you're welcome. And the reason why those words are very intentionally chosen, and hopefully everyone hears this, is that puts the other person receiving that message off the defensive. So you're not coming at it from hey, you're not talking about this enough. Can you tell me more? It's more about, hey, I'm curious about. These are opening broad questions that are about helping the other person come into an understanding with you and less defensiveness. Okay, so anytime you're wanting more of something, say, hey, I'm curious. I'd love to know more about. And Christina, you said talking about feelings. Tell me more about that.
I think, I don't know if it's just me, but I always feel like I'm not sure like what I'm allowed to talk about feelings at the workplace. Like what's too much, what's too, and I don't know if it's girly or Asian or otherwise, but like what's the level of like what's appropriate to be like how much am I supposed to tell people? Like I know I probably shouldn't like, and that's, yeah, what's the line between like what's right to say my feelings and what's too personal?
Yeah, it's such an important question. And I'll go over here to the next slide because we have some, you brought this up, like the cultural challenge, right? Is it too girly? Is it too, did you say even too Asian? Is that what you said?
Yeah, because I guess, yeah. I guess my family's Asian and British, and we just don't generally talk about feelings. So that even at the workplace, I'm like, well, I don't talk about feelings at home. So now, like, if I talk about feelings at work, I don't even know how to do it outside of work. So
Yeah. Oh, I love this. You're like, I don't do it at home, so I don't even know how to do that at work. So I'll look at it from 2 points of view, which is as an employee and as a leader. Christina, do you lead a team?
I do. I'm not a functional manager, but I lead a group for developing products and documents and stuff.
Yeah. So here's what I say. First, as a leader, I think that it's having been one, what I feel is the right balance is to share without oversharing. And I know that's broad, but for example, you can say things like, if the week has been super overwhelming for you, it's okay for as a leader to say, hey, look, team, this has been a really overwhelming week. I'm going to be short on time. I want to be there for all of you, but know that, it's just been overwhelming. So I'm going to need to take a little bit of time for myself. Now, let me ask you, Christina, did that feel too much?
No, that felt about right. I like that.
Yeah. And the reason why I ask is this is the line between being transparent without crossing. It's okay to say transparently what is going on for you. What is crossing the line is saying something like, it's overwhelming and you guys are like driving me batty. That is a no-no, right? Because then you're putting that feeling onto them. That's the difference.
Okay.
It's just to own it and be like, you know what, it's been overwhelming. I'm just going to take a little bit of a break. You can find me if you need me. Right? Factual, also being transparent and saying, I'm still there for y'all, but here, I'm just going to take a break. Okay. And then as an employee, if you're wanting to build relationships with your manager or your team or your peers, I would say it depends on the context in terms of how long you've known the people and the person. But as it relates to me being an employee and I want to build a relationship with my manager, I would share a little bit more than that just to help them understand your context and your challenges. It could be something like, it's been really an overwhelming week. I've brought in a new dog. My kids are sick. And so, boss, I am asking for support in this way because it's been overwhelming for all of those reasons. So again, sharing a little bit more and knowing what it is you want from your leader. If it's, hey, I want you to understand my context. It's not that I haven't been doing my work or turning stuff in, kind of stating that at the end of that sentence, right? So at the end of the day, in that context, it depends on your relationship with that person. But if you want to build connective relationships, you do have to share a little bit more and know the reason why you're doing that in terms of what you're asking for. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I like the personal feeling and like a reason of something I'm trying to get and not dumping on them. I like those kind of three aspects.
Yeah, good. Yeah. The dumping on people, never a good idea. And if that resonated with you, great. If you have more questions around that, I'm happy to do any real-time coaching around that. I think Clarence is doing such a great job about keeping me on time. I'm like, 10 more minutes left. Okay. So the thing to tie to this is that, yes, many of us are women, which we have challenges. And I say that because I have worked specifically with women and coaching them through some of the challenges that we have and asking for what we want in the workplace and speaking up. And then we also have, many of us, this cultural expectation of the things that we grew up with. I know me personally, I'm a Korean American. And please, I get confused on this. I was not born here, so I guess that indicates I'm not first generation, right? Yeah, I think you have to have been born in the States to be first generation. So I came to the States when I was 6, and again, grew up with the undercurrent tone of do well in school, don't make waves, don't go, don't speak up too much, and just do the job and do the grind. And so in my line of work, as you can imagine, I'm a leadership coach. I'm very much out there. Like, I've had to undo so much of the model minority type behaviors that don't do me a service in this line of work. So it's been my journey. And I see that a lot of you resonate with that too. So we have some challenges that, if we're aware of them, we can definitely work through in order to be an effective leader in this hybrid world. Rosary, you said born abroad but immigrated very young. Okay, thank you for sharing that. Yeah. So there's cultural components as well. Anyone have questions around this? Because what I'm curious to know is, what is coming up for you? I feel as though I've been talking fast and furious and blah, blah, blahing. So you can put it in chat, things that you're more curious about, things that are coming up for you. Let's see what's resonating. Y'all are hard at thinking, taking the time to think.
I guess while people are typing, sometimes I will see the model minority stereotype playing, so in perceptions, like playing out negatively, sometimes with myself or with colleagues. And, I think if someone's just being blatant, right, there's one way to address it. But if it's really just like, sometimes you can tell, like, that's not an okay thing to say, but it's because you're ill-informed. Sometimes I'm torn with how to address that. You could talk to someone one-on-one, and that's always what I like to try to do. But then sort of, what do you say? And I know it depends on the context, but I guess there's always a little piece of me that's kind of shocked at first, and it's like, oh, people still say things like that. But, I don't know. That's just something that came up. I've been thinking about it. I had someone told me a few years ago that they were treated very unfairly, and it was a very much, oh, well, you're the woman, and this other person, they're the breadwinner. And it's like, so they didn't say that to me. It was to a colleague. It was someone speaking with me. But that's just sort of what I've been thinking about.
Yeah, I thank you for sharing that. It's a very important topic to talk about. And I've been doing so many talks on how to be an ally and how do we have these conversations. So I applaud you for bringing this up, Rosary. And, I think that it starts from a place of awareness. And this is what I always go back to as the foundation, is knowing that, one, you had a reaction to it, which is all valid, and to think about, what did that bring up for you? What was the trigger? And processing that is an important place to start with, right? So if we don't process it, it kind of sits with us, and it might come out in inappropriate ways later on. So the first thing is to process it. What feelings did it bring up in you? And then secondly, to decide, how do you address it? Most of the time, I suggest people to address it offline first, as a first point of what I call intervention, which is to pull the person aside to say, hey, I was really curious. You mentioned this, or you said something like, and you can, reiterate back what you heard and say, I'm wondering what you meant by that. And here's why, because I took it in this way. I wanted to share with you my experience in that I heard it this way, and I'm wondering what you meant by that. And engaging in a conversation in that way One, if you notice my tone, and of course, this took a lot of practice. It's not just something that is very easy to do. And I know it, I'm making it sound really easy, but it's not. But when you say it in that way, it feels more conversational. And again, coming from a place of wanting to learn, right? If you engage someone in that tone, they're more apt to be open and honest with you, in which then you can turn the conversation around into a place of learning versus putting somebody on the defensive or coming in hot and saying, something like, dude, you were totally offensive or blah, blah, blah. Because the point is to have a conversation in which both parties can learn. So did that make sense, Rosary?
Yeah, thank you for that. I think it's really helpful too to have these. Oh, I tried to turn on my video, but I'm not sure if it did. To have these kind of like, it's not a script in a bad way, but something that you can say, so that in the moment when maybe you got caught off guard or whatever, you're not gonna come in hot, like you say.
Mhm.
You've got something already there of, oh, well, maybe we can understand each other better, or something like that.
Yeah, and I love to provide like a framing for how to say it, because often that's the struggle for people. They might know the feeling and what they want to get across, but how to say it is always that's the biggest question I get. How do I say this? Well, again, the mindset of curiosity helps in saying, I'm curious about, I heard this, here's the impact it had on me, but I want to learn from you what you meant by that. Thank you. All right. So yeah, you're welcome. Clarence, how much time do I have left?
Technically 2 minutes. So I'm just putting in just to tee up for the next session, but certainly go ahead and I think you might have some closing remarks here.
I do. Yes. So here's some tools I want to leave you all with. Hopefully this was a conversation you all enjoyed and learned from, but I always say to be a better leader, work with a coach if you can and get feedback. If nothing else, ask for feedback in terms of how you're showing up with your team and from people at work that you trust that can provide you with a little bit more like, here's areas where you excel, here's areas where you can do things differently. Get a mentor or mentors if you can, and always look for ways to continuously develop yourself. This is a quote that I love, but I also just connect with me. I would love to continue the conversation with all of you. You can find me on my website, find me on LinkedIn, connect with me. I'm on Instagram as well. And hopefully this resonated. I've so enjoyed spending this time with all of you, and I look forward to continuing the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Sohi.
And folks, I had put in chat, if you could just take a moment and fill out your survey, that would be helpful for us as well as Sohi. And focus circles are next in session. So take a look at the agenda by last name, basically, and you can kind of join that live stream in, oh gosh, I'm in mountain time, in about 6 minutes. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Have fun, everyone.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Sohi.
Mhm.
Bye.
Yeah, you really, I mean, tip of iceberg stuff when you start talking about the cultural challenges, right? And fighting that model minority myth.
Yeah, it's a big topic to unpack.
It's kind of like in the genetics, so it's really hard to shake, right? You both for women as well as for guys, right? It's just really hard sometimes, and I, in challenging things, I default back to my Asianness, right? And I just clam up, right?
I agree.
I think, even in the years I've done this work, I still get caught off guard by those things. So it's difficult. Yeah.
All right. Well, certainly depending on your own schedule and availability today, thank you again so much, for great comments. I'll definitely connect with you via LinkedIn, but feel free, to sit in and some of the other sessions as well. Yeah.
I will, and I'll be doing the second focus circle. So hopefully you'll see some folks. Thank you for having me. And Jessica, you were awesome.
Yeah, thanks so much, Sohi.
Welcome. Okay, bye.
Okay, take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care.